Well, I got the B7 Avant in here today. And I'm going to be doing some brakes. Because if you would notice, one of these wheels is not like the other. So we got a brake problem. So if we come over here to the back of the car, you can kind of see in there that, you know, we got some pad. Not a lot of contact area though. And then we come around here and there's, no pad left. It's basically the piston. Like, I'm actually fairly confident that it's the piston rubbing on the rotor. So these brakes are completely gone and the rotor has to get changed. I'm still waiting on the caliper to show up, but basically the cause for this is the parking brake. It seizes, so it doesn't fully disengage, which you can see right here that there's a space. That space right there means that the parking brake is being pulled down. It is engaged on the rotor. All inside here is going to be corroded, and yeah, so that's the issue. That's the cause of the problem here. It's kind of hard to see, but right in here you can see that there's like a giant step in there, and that's what I'm assuming is the piston in the caliper was actually wearing into the rotor, because it's a very sharp edge right here. So you can see the end of my finger, and then when I put it in, it disappears behind this ridge because that's how far it goes in. Just to make sure nothing goes wrong in the future, I'm going to change both of them, because if one of those calipers is already seizing, then the other one is probably close behind. So you can see right here, this one is touching. So that means that this one does actuate correctly. And it moves back. So when you pull the handbrake, that pulls down and it locks it up, and then it moves back. And that side, it didn't move back. So that brake is basically stuck on at all times. It's kind of a shame because there's a lot of brake pad that actually left. 2 new rotors, 2 calipers. Calipers haven't showed up yet. Since I'm here doing the brakes, might as well do the front while we're in here. So when we got the car, one of these calipers was purple for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why only one of them is purple, but it is. So we have a purple caliper on one side, but the brake pads up here are pretty good. I'm going to clean these up and repaint them so that way they match both sides, as well as everything that I said that I'm doing on the back. So it's almost 7 in the morning. So this sucks. And I'm going to have to figure out how to get all the baked on brake dust off of that wheel. So to make my life easier, let's just in that. Now I have access. What the hell is that noise? Jesus, that was annoying. Anyway, now we have better access to the back here. So now when you're looking at the back of these calipers, there's a bunch of Allen heads right here, and we don't want to take those out. That's how we actually dismantle the caliper itself. There's actually going to be these bolts right here that we're going to be getting off. So before I do anything, I need to find penetrating fluid, because this is Canada. And like 90% of working on cars here is breathing this stuff in. I'm going to spray this down in here. So that's good, and the set screw. Let's do the other side. Oh god, that got me in the face. God, it burns. Now, since I don't have the calipers yet, I'm probably gonna hold off on this for now. Still gonna lube them up, make my life easier in the future. Okay, now these ones here suck to get to, because all-wheel drive. It's like one right here. And in Volkswagen's infinite wisdom, they made them Allen heads. You know, try to get them. That's gonna suck. Every part of it's gonna suck. There's no set screw, so that's good. That's a good start. Everything's sprayed down. I should probably do something about this rust. No, I'm getting distracted. Problem at hand. Brakes. Car needs to stop before it looks decent. You know, it's got a lot wrong with it, but I mean, like, it's really not that bad. 2,000 bucks Canadian. Needed an ABS sensor on this side and a wheel bearing, and that was it for the safety. 2,000 bucks for the car, about 250 in parts. That wheel bearing fucking sucked. I was gonna off myself after that one, but I ended up getting it. That's kind of neat, but like, it's been a decent car. Really been no issues at all. It's just maintenance, oil changes, got new tires. I put the AMG wheels on it. So I've been getting more stuff in the garage all like sorted out and whatever. And I got my compressor in the other room, so it's nice and quiet. You know, I've had this thing kicking around for probably about 4 or 5 years now. Served me well. The little lock spring there doesn't do anything. Sockets just fall right off. There's nothing that holds that in place. This right here just turns freely. There's no clicks, and you can just spin it as many times as you want. So that doesn't do anything. Anyway, I ended up getting a new one. I was gonna play with that. It's a new Aircat. Ran the line. Now, isn't that just the most depressing thing you've ever seen in your life? We're doing it the old-fashioned way. So now let's pretend like we know what we're doing. This is gonna suck. Yeah, just get in there. Okay, oh, come on. Come on, let's go. Awesome. I need more leverage. Oh, I have a breaker bar. It's already on there. Oh my god. Who the fuck did these brakes? Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm just gonna pass out for a second. Oh my god. I just need like a little bit more airline. Oh my god, why? Okay, is that? Oh my god, I think we got enough. I need F. Yeah, F is off. Oh, okay. So that's like, fuck, get the fuck off. Okay. That one's like, return it back to normal. See, I like their naming scheme. That's pretty good, man. Aircat knows what's up. Really? Oh my god. Holy Christ. Oh god, that thing's friggin' loud. When you're taking these off, you want to take it off in a way where if one of them is already out, then it's not going to reflect on how you're actually taking it off. Now, because there's two bolts, there's one on the top, there's one on the bottom. If I were to take this top one out completely, that means that there's nothing holding this in place, so it can spin freely. So now if I'm going to do the bottom one, it catches, and I'm applying pressure down to loosen it off, then I'm going to pull the entire caliper. So you always try and take the opposite side off first, so that way when this one is free and has nothing holding it in place, if I'm loosening this one, it's just going to push up against the rotor, and it's not going to get in the way of anything. So these are 21s. Ah, god damn it. Oh, god damn it. There we go. I should probably take that off first so it doesn't break. Let's just kind of slide that right back on. Fish screwdriver. Yeah, spider webs. Let's pop this little sensor out here. And now let's pull this off. Delicious. And you can just hang out there with the axle for a bit. This one here is a Torx 30. And before we even try, we're going to hammer on it. That should help free it up. Oh, they're loosened. There we go. Beautiful. Look at this. The rotor's even coming off by itself. This never happens. Oh man, normally you gotta beat the hell out of this to get it off. Well, I mean, I guess it's good that we're changing the rotor. We do have a giant area right in here where there was no contact at one point, and then there was contact, so now the corrosion is being worn in. The rotor was definitely still good on the outside, but the inside is showing some wear. Now we get to clean this. Delicious. WD-40, awesome, that's great. I don't even care. Anti-seize. Alright, no more corrosion on there. So now I'm just going to put anti-seize on here, copper stuff. So this stuff is a lot cheaper than the silver, which is why it exists. Good for high temperatures. The silver stuff would be for parts that could suffer from galvanic corrosion. So where two different types of metal meet, so aluminum and steel, or again here, steel on aluminum. These bolts, steel in aluminum, so you would use the silver anti-seize between all of these surfaces. Because copper and aluminum, that's going to eat each other, and that will actually make it worse. Okay, so that's good. Nice thin coating. Then one thing that I just thought about is I want to paint the brake caliper. I mean, this is a daily driver. It's not going to be like a show car, so I don't need to take the whole thing off or anything. So you can actually see that this was also painted on the car because it's still silver on the back. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this up like this. And I'm just going to put it right back on. So now I just got to get a bag to cover all this crap and then we can clean this up. Oh my god, would you look at this? I'm actually using brake cleaner on brakes. Oh, what a wild time we live in. Pop this out. There's the brake pad. Look at all that corrosion. Wow. Now, before I paint this, I just want to explain something about paint and brakes and painting your brakes. So the first thing is caliper paint. Should you be using caliper paint? Well, yes and no. There's really no point to it. This says that it's rated for 490 degrees Celsius because I am Canadian, I live in Canada, and we use the metric system. So all of these measurements are going to be in Celsius. Case of 490, that's a lot. That's extremely hot. You have to consider what's the temperature range for regular spray paint. So right here I have acrylic, and then right here I have enamel. Yes, this will work. Caliper paint will work. There's no question about that. It's expensive though. This can right here is about $25 Canadian. This can right here is about $8. So why would I be spending so much on this? I'm going to explain why I'm not, and I'm going to be using enamel for a couple reasons. So one, you have to consider how brakes actually work, which gives you a normal brake operating range temperature between 100 to 200 degrees Celsius. That's like your normal average driving, maybe a really prolonged highway stop where you're riding the brakes for a really long time. You might see temperatures around 200 degrees. But even then, that's a stretch. If you hit 200 degrees, it's more than likely that there's something wrong with the brakes. For instance, riding, as opposed to there actually being a reason for it to be getting to 200 degrees Celsius. Regular spray paints, acrylic and enamel. These are good to about 250 to 300 degrees Celsius before they start to fail. Now, there is a little bit of speculation between colors, so yellow and white, they're going to have a little bit of tarnishing around those colors, so those might be closer to 200 to 250 before failure point, because yellow will start turning more of an orange, and then white will start turning yellow. But for regular colors, the temperature range is around 250 to 300 degrees Celsius, and the average brake temperature range is 100 to 200 degrees Celsius. Even if you're driving around like a dickhead, and you get those brakes pretty hot, is the temperature range of the paint is good to 250, that's where it starts, and then it goes up to about 300. But your brake fluid, now this car specifically uses DOT4, and that brake fluid is only good to about 230, 240 degrees Celsius, right around there, which means that the average brake temperature, 100 to 200 degrees, is obviously less than the boiling point of the brake fluid. And the brake fluid boiling point is lower than the failure point of regular spray paint, which means that if your brakes are getting to 490 degrees Celsius to justify the need for caliper paint, you have significantly bigger issues on your hand, like brake fade, boiling brake fluid. You're gonna have water boiling because there's still like 3.5% of brake fluid is water, which essentially means that you're gonna be off the road in a ditch before your paint fails. So there's no reason to be using specific caliper paint. You can just use regular spray. Now, the difference between acrylic and enamel is that acrylic is often suspended in a water base, so it dries very fast, where enamel paint is essentially suspended in kind of a resin. So that means two things again. Light colors in enamel are going to yellow over time, whereas acrylic will stay crystal clear. So if you're going to be clear coating something, try and use acrylic clear coat. And if you're just going for a generic good shine, then regular enamel is going to be more than enough. So I'm just going to go over this with a couple coats of primer, get something to stick to, and then we're just using red enamel paint right over top of it. Temperature range of 250 to 300 degrees Celsius, and that's significantly higher than the boiling point of the brake fluid. So we're more than content for everything that's going to be going on there. I don't know, maybe you learned something, but I'm going to start masking all this up. Okay, so now for primer, I have like generic gray, self-etching primer, sandable primer, and then generic white. Now, why am I using so many different kinds of primer? Because it's lockdown, and I can't go to the store to get more stuff. It'd be better to have all one kind or whatever, but I'm just trying to use up the rest of what I have, so I get it masked off enough. I'm not too concerned. It's just a daily driver. I'm not building show cars here. Now again, for the red, I only have one can. It's mostly full, so I'm going to be using a mixture of everything. So I got some red here, some orange, because that's kind of close. And I got some more red here. So my plan, I'm going to do one coat of orange on all of them. It's kind of like a base tack coat, so that way everything sticks to it. It gets some coverage, and then I'm going to cover the orange with red. And these have about the same amount in them, so I figure I could probably get one coat down with that. These ones here, maybe half a coat, so I'm going to spray them from really far away to get kind of like a mist coat over top, and then another mist coat over top, and then the last coat with this red here. So that way all of the calipers have the same amount of each coat, so they'll all be the same color, not necessarily exactly what this color is going to look like. I don't know, lockdown, you gotta be creative. Anyway, well, that primer dries, now I can take apart the other side. Now those weren't even hard because I already had the side apart when I did the bearing. Wow, it's almost like they made torque specs for a reason. Interesting. Okay, so I got the primer down on that one. It's all masked off. And I got the primer down on this one, and it's all masked off. This is ready to be painted. That's ready to be painted. I could probably still take that side apart, but I don't really want to have the brake line disconnected and then brake fluid going everywhere, which is another thing that you want to take into consideration if you have a similar issue where the parking brake is basically stuck on and you have to change your caliper. When you disconnect that, you obviously have to bleed it. Right? Yeah, makes sense. Another thing that you want to pay attention with brakes is a domino effect. So now if we disconnect this, change this, put a new caliper on, then we bleed it, we have essentially fresh fluid going through that specific brake line, which means that this brake is going to have the best braking pressure out of the other three. So this one is going to grab first and then to the other one. So it's going to have a domino effect where now one corner is going to grab more than the rest, and you're going to have pulling when you hit the brakes. So to avoid the domino effect, we have to bleed all of them. So I'm just going to wait until I get it, and then I'll pick that up. But this side right here can go back together because I already prepped the hub and the caliper and everything is done. So this side here really shouldn't be that bad because I changed the bearing. So this was already cleaned up. It was a press-in bearing, so I did have to reuse the hub and press that into the new bearing. But I don't know, it'll clean up fine. I'll do it just like this side, and then we can start putting it all back together. Front are all painted. They're dry. It's been a few days. I was getting ready to put the rotors on. Like, the front's done. It's ready for rotors, can be bolted back up, torque everything, and we're golden. I just quickly looked just to make sure that they're the right ones and everything seemed fine. But now, under closer inspection, these things are fucked. So first of all, they sent me 2 right side rotors. So you can see that the direction goes in the same way on both of them. Now, the direction isn't a huge concern because these are straight vane rotors. So the vanes go straight down, so they can be mounted on either side and everything's fine. The thing is the slots. Now some manufacturers actually do it backwards, so that way the leading edge would be the front edge. Now there's different reasons for the slotting. Most theories would be that it dissipates brake dust, and ideally what would happen, calipers on the back, so let's take the brake pad, put it right here. Okay, so this would simulate the left front rotor. Now in theory, we're going to be spinning in this direction, which means that as you're hitting the brakes, these are hitting the pad and it's pulling the brake dust down toward the center. Some manufacturers prefer to do this because it keeps brake dust from flying out, which covers the wheel, as well as flies out and covers everything else, which creates tons of corrosion. So that's fine. It keeps it all right in the center. But at the same time, now let's say that this is the right front, so now this would be the correct orientation as far as this being the direction that I would prefer it to go, is that now when we're going down, these slots are pointed inward, which means that they come out. So it's going to be projecting the brake dust out, and they're going to essentially be pushing the brake dust out because as it's spinning, the velocity is pushing out. So if the velocity is pushing out, it's pushing the brake dust out of the slot. Whereas if this was the left front, because the forces are still going to be pushing out regardless, and in the channel, if the forces are pushing it this way by the rotational forces pushing it down, then it's going to slide in the track and come down toward the center. Now that, in theory, would be how it works. But in real world applications, it really doesn't matter that much. These are not huge differences that you're going to see. These aren't giant things that you're going to see a huge performance increase from. It's really mostly for aesthetic. And the slots also reduce weight, as well as the holes. So, you know, you might save a little bit of weight, but it's not going to be anything where you're actually going to notice an increase in power, even though it is less rotational mass that it's going to have to initially get going. So it will require less power. Again, like in a scientific test, it would require less power, so fractionally small that it's not going to matter in a real world instance. Now, the thing that concerns me with this is how poorly they're machined. This portion of this brush is completely straight. Normally you want these holes to have some kind of curve following the direction, so that way everything is working seamlessly. We align it up to these 2 bottom ones, and you can see that it does have the hole slightly out, so it does have a nice curve. Everything's fine. Again, everything's good. You can see that there's a much bigger gap here, and an even bigger gap. Then we come down to this last one, where you can see that not only do we have a big gap, so now these 2 here have less of an arch. These 3 have more of an arch, but this hole isn't centered. So if we go from center to center, that's right where my finger is. If we go to center, it's off by almost an entire centimeter. So now this is going to throw the rotor off balance because now the holes are no longer spaced out correctly. So now right here on this has slightly more weight than everywhere else on the rotor. So again, it's going to be fractionally small, but this might actually cause a vibration somewhere around highway speeds because they are all like this. So again, if we look at this one here, this one right here is a little bit further apart. This one is visibly further apart. Like you can see that. You don't even have to measure it. These ones here, the curve actually goes in the wrong direction. This one's curved like this. These rear ones, also terrible. Now these are closer on the inside. That one's closer on the outside. This one right here, it has a reverse arch. And then the machining on the slots themselves. You can see that if we line this up perfectly straight, we're covering the bottom corner here because the slots have a curve on the end of some of them where some of them are straight. So again, right here, we don't even have to line it up. You can see right there that that one's curving out. This one right here actually has a reverse arch to the entire thing. Basically, short story long here is these rotors are completely dicked. I'm not going to use them because I could put the entire thing together. They could be fine, but with this many variations in the actual construction of them and like how poorly they're machined, this could actually cause a vibration at highway speeds, which means I'm going to have to take the entire thing apart again, replace the rotors, put them all back together. So I contacted the seller to try and get a refund. I'm still waiting on the refund. It's been 4 days now. They said that they would give me a return shipping label so I could send them back, and I still haven't heard anything from them. But for the time being, I did get the rear calipers. So I'm going to take apart the rear brakes. I'm going to put the calipers on, mask them off exactly like I did this one. I'm going to paint them same way that I did before, just street car, daily driver, nothing crazy. And I'm just going to get this to the point where the calipers are done, the hubs are all cleaned, I have the anti-seize on them, and everything is completely ready to be assembled. All I need are rotors and pads. But if that ends up taking too long, because Canada, so shipping takes for goddamn ever around here, so the rotors themselves took about a week and a half to show up. These came from Canada. They actually came from Ontario, so they were literally in the same province, and they still took a week and a half to show up, which means that it's going to be around a week to week and a half for me to send them back before I get the refund, and then I'm going to have to buy from someone else. It's going to be about a week and a half before I get new products from a different reseller, hopefully one more reputable than this, because this is ridiculous. So at that point, we're already looking at like 3 weeks waiting time just to get new rotors, and that's if they respond basically right now to give me the return label, and then I can drop them off. But we're at 4 days now. I'm still waiting, so I don't know what's going on. But the way I'm looking at it right now is in order to get the new rotors and pads, I'm probably looking at about a month before I actually have this thing back together. And because you can't get stuff like this in town, because it's such a small city, I'm basically shit out of luck. So I need to get this mobile and out as fast as possible, but not in a huge rush, just, you know, faster than a friggin' month. So for now, I'm just gonna take apart the rear brakes, I'm gonna get the calipers on, paint those, and then it's gonna take about 12 hours for it to dry anyway, because it's that enamel paint, so it's not quick dry. And if I don't hear anything back from them tomorrow about sending these back, then I'm just gonna put those rotors back on, put the front pads back on, and then just get new pads for the back. And then rock those on the old rotors that are completely dicked. Come here, buddy. So I didn't know how hard this was going to be, so I did this first so that way I wasn't taking up like hours of footage. Two things. One, there was no pad on the inside at all. It is completely gone. So it was the piston like I was assuming it was. So I don't know if you can see that, but it is literally like melted. So that piston is done. That caliper is scrap. This is the rotor. So it's literally like indented in and across. Like this thing is just absolutely fucked. But there's a 14 mil bolt in there, so someone had these off at one point and they serviced it and they dicked the whole thing so they didn't grease anything. So again, someone was in here, someone had the opportunity to fix these things and they didn't. So normally it's supposed to be one of these 8mm Allen heads. So you can use a socket to get these out. Unfortunately mine are 1/2 inch though. So because of the length of the socket, it'll hit the shock. So I couldn't use that and I actually had to use an 8mm Allen key, which is this guy right here. And then an extension with an 11mm because mine have a recessed area to stop nuts from falling all the way down inside. So because of that, I had to go with an 11 just so it would fit completely over. Otherwise, it would only fit to about there. I mean, it would make sense. Use an 8mm socket on an 8mm Allen head as it's 8mm. And in there, have leverage, break it free, all that junk, you know, whatever. And then for whatever reason, the set screw decided to retighten. I had to put a lug nut in here, take the jack, put it under this to hold it, so that way when I'm breaking this loose, it's pushing on the lug nut, which is on the jack. So anyway, now I get to do the other side. Hopefully it's not as shitty as this side. I'm not excited. while we have tension on everything, this isn't rattling around because it's all still tight. I'm going to take this parking brake line off first. So I need a flathead screwdriver and a hammer. Right here, under all this dirt. There's like a little like C-clip or whatever goes around. So I don't know, they're usually in like a whole bunch of different angles and everything. This one here, I guess is, this one's going straight on, so it has to come straight off. So that's going to make it extremely difficult to fucking remove because goddamn everything's in the way. Out of the car, you bastard. Oh, there we go. Oh, no. Oh, my God. So anyway, that's on there. And if you're not a dickhead, then usually you put it on straight this way. So that way you can get a hammer right in here, like this, and you can hammer it off. And it comes off pretty clean. Whoever put this back together is kind of a dick, so they put it on like this, so it was easy for them to install and hard as shit for me to remove. I'm going to attempt to get this out. Sucks trying to get leverage. Goddamn muffler in the way. There we go. Now with that out, I can just hit this a few times. There we go. Now for this piece right here, you want to take the boot, just kind of weasel it through and make sure it comes through. Don't let it bunch up because that'll rip it. And we are free. Right down here. Come on, get in there at somewhat of a normal angle. Just gotta like work it in and back out. We basically have one shot or it's gonna strip. Ah, damn it. How did you... What? Come here, Spider-Man. Let's go, buddy. So many spiders everywhere. I know, you're just trying to eat all the mosquitoes. Can you not? Come on. There you go. Spiders aren't all that bad. They're just trying to help you out. No one likes them. I can relate to that. Oh, fuck you. Okay. This is awesome. I love the amount of room that they give you here. Just enough so you know you can make it happen, but it's also just enough that you want to fucking off yourself. It's getting kind of loose. Now we gotta do the bottom one, break that loose before we take it off. If we were to take the bottom one out first and then have to break this loose, then the force on that is going to relieve off of the caliper and it's gonna also try and pull it out. Then you're gonna have this flopping caliper everywhere. Or you can just break them both loose first until they're about finger tight and then just go for broke. Either or, but it's always a good habit just to make sure that you do it the right way. So now the bottom one is right here. I really have no idea if you're gonna be able to see this. So I gotta try and get this in here where my hand doesn't reach at all. What the hell? Oh, what the fuck? That one's a goddamn 14 too. Jesus Christ. Well, I mean, hopefully it's a 14. I really don't know, but it's changed just like the last one was. Fuck you. There we go. So see, this is what I was talking about here. It's moving the whole caliper. So now if we were doing this on the top side and this bolt down here is out, then every time we torque on it, it's going to pull this off because there's not going to be a bolt here holding it on. Try and take that out. It's too long and hits the shock. Perfect. So that can live in there. Now back to the top. A quarter turn at a time. Ah, god damn it, you fucker. Ow. Like, it doesn't help already being in tight places and having this fucking camera on my head. Hit it on everything, and I have no idea if it's pointed right, so now I don't even know if you can actually see anything that's going on. Because, like the videos with the A3, hit my head on shit, and then I was pointed at nothing for a while, and you guys didn't even see what the hell was going on for half the video. Deadly. Oh yeah, one thing that I probably should have done first, but I just remembered about it now, is break free the brake line, because I'm changing the calipers. Whoops. This is also a 13. Oh my god. Okay, let's try some tappy tap tap. Alright. Is that done leaking? Eh, it's done leaking enough. What the hell? Okay, so this is like stuck on there. So anyway, I'm just gonna let that drain out, I guess, and I'll clean up the hubs. I'll put the new calipers on, and I can paint those. And tomorrow, when everything's dry, we could probably assemble them and just leave air in the caliper. That'll make sure that they don't compress and actually touch anything. So I could change them and not bleed the rear, so that way it only has front brakes, just so I can get it out of here. And then when I get the new stuff, bring it back in, rip it apart, and all that jazz. I'm so excited about everything that I gotta do right now. And hopefully I actually remember to show you guys the entire painting process. Clean enough. Anyway, I don't know. Like the video or dislike it, that's cool, or whatever. Or like, subscribe if you're like some fucked up freak who loves watching me suffer while I'm trying to make these stupid videos. Or don't do any of it. I'm not telling you what to do.